Now, first thing, just as a summary of the fundamentals of the difference between an Intro to Marketing course and an Intro to Business course. You've got the 4 Ps and the 6 environments. And as I said in the previous class, this course is focusing on the 6 environments, which are listed there, right? Now, the 4 Ps are product, price, promotion, place. That's what you're going to be taught in your Fundamentals to Marketing course. Those are the things that you can control. You can increase the price, you can lower the price, or you can have the same price as everything else, like bacon double cheeseburgers, right? Promotion. You can use radio ads, you can use TV ads, you can have a big-ass website. That's in your control. So you got price, promotion, product. You can make your product out of aluminum, real good quality leather, cheap plastic, whatever you want. That's in your control, right? And place, which also means location. You can be like Krispy Kreme and just have one store where people line up, where you can have Tim Hortons all across Canada. Those are the 4 Ps, the things that you can control. What this course does is talk about the 6 environments, the things that influence you. Technological, social, cultural, political, physical, economic, and competitive. And the reason why we talk about them in this order is because the competitive environment is the most important one. So I'm going to scroll down here and just give you a little bit of an introduction to this in a little bit more detail. First of all, let's talk about the economic environment. The economic environment is things like the financial health of a region. That means whether the government in that area, the municipal government or the regional government's got taxes to be able to pay for things, and people can afford to pay those taxes. Are the employees of companies in that area making enough money that they can go to the keg every once in a while, or are they just going to McDonald's for a bacon double cheeseburgers? Currency exchange rate. How many people here sometimes like to go across the U.S. to buy stuff? Right, and it was okay last year when the Canadian dollar was really, really high, but now it's dropped to 79 in the last couple of days. That's not so good, is it? However, a lot of things that Canada does in our international business economy is exporting, and having a low Canadian dollar is very advantageous because it means we can sell a lot of stuff to other people and they'll buy it more cheaply because our dollar isn't as high as the American dollar. Rates of inflation. That simply means if the cost of a house right now is, an average house, maybe $350,000, a year from now is it going to be $355,000 or $395,000 or $425,000? Is the price of a Big Mac and fries combo going to be $357,000 this year, and 12 months from now also $357,000? So if goods and services go up on a regular, easy basis, that inflation is not too high. But in some countries where the economy is very stressed, the prices go up very, very fast. And that makes it difficult, because it means when you're a company and you have employees, you always have to be paying them more money and more money to be able to buy the basic necessities. Minimum wage. That's another example of an economic indicator. Minimum wage for people working in a regular job is how much? $8.75. Right, and if you're working as a bartender or a waitress, it's $7.45 because you get tips, right? Now, if you had a restaurant and you were planning them all across Canada and then decided to expand into the U.S., what would be minimum wage there?
A couple bucks.
It's not as high as it is in Canada, but then also the economy is balanced differently. If you also decide to open some in Mexico, where a lot of Canadians go on vacation, totally different situation. Also, national balance of payments. You don't really think about this, but that means the ability for the government to be able to support social infrastructure services. And do we have a deficit or a surplus? A deficit basically means that the government and the Canadian economy are selling more things to people overseas than is what being bought for us. Okay? Let's talk about the political, legal, regulatory environment. This is a direct consequence of political parties in power. All kinds of rules and regulations about things, limiting or restricting importing. For example, the food products that we import, there's rules or regulations on how they're processed, and on things that we export, on whether it can be labeled Canada A or Canada B. How the government is influenced by larger governments or special interests outside the country. For example, in the United States, there's recent rules and regulations about cars being sold and how many miles per gallon they get for gas. And so if a Canadian company, say General Motors in Oshawa, wants to export cars to the United States, they have to meet those rules and regulations. Another example would be traveling. The Americans no-fly list as a result of September 11th. worries about homeland security, and is your last name match somebody on that list? Those are examples. Also, rules and laws reflecting social, cultural changes in the demographic makeup of citizens. There's all kinds of rules and regulations about religion and interaction with other people, whether you're getting divorced or married, or whether or not you can beat your kids. Some people saying it's perfectly okay in my religion. People saying yes, but the government of Ontario says you cannot beat your kids with a stick. It doesn't matter what it says in your particular, holy book or whatever it might be. So that's an example of laws and rules and conflict in that circumstance. Social cultural environment. This also influences businesses in many different ways. Not just things like a language, but also coloring and shape and who you use for advertising. Language for use of publications and broadcast. One of the things that companies from India and China have a problem with in Canada is that they want to sell a food product or a clothing product. The requirements are the labels have to be in English and French. So they find somebody in Beijing or in Mumbai who translate their product into English. That's usually not a problem. But to find someone who can translate it into French as well, and then the manual that goes with the product, if that's necessary, that's often very, very difficult. Relationships between people, different faith, ethnicity, language, holidays. Right? It used to be that we just had Christmas holiday and Easter, and that was about it. Now we have several other people talking about, well, I've got Chinese New Year coming up, and we've got Ramadan. And it's not just a school thing. It's in businesses as well. So this also has to do with the way companies operate and the allowances they have to have for employees with days off and those kinds of considerations. People using commercials to focus on target market segment. In Toronto, you very seldom see people in TV commercials about some product or service who look like me. They look like you. The reason for that is because the companies are trying to target market those demographics that are coming into Canada from other countries that have got money and wealth and interested in buying new products and services. And also color, slogans, slang expressions, all kinds of things like that. The use of phrases and making reference to YouTube. I found it very interesting that yesterday Obama's speech, first thing they did with it, put it on YouTube. Right? As an example of the new generation. The technological environment. The first thing people think of is, do you have the internet? But the technological environment is more complicated than that. It's things such as how computers operate in order to be able to process payments. Most Canadians, when they're shopping at Christmas time, use an Interac card. Have you ever gone to a store when a little cardboard sign says Interac down, cash only, or credit cards, those type of things? So that's an example of the technological environment. One of the key things about the technological environment is it's expensive. So in countries that are OECD countries, meaning countries like Canada, France, Spain, United States, and so on, the technical infrastructure is good because the government has tax dollars from corporate tax to be able to spend on things like the companies are big enough. The technological infrastructure is very, very expensive. It's only big, large companies that can string hydro poles all the way across the country. You can't do that with small and medium-sized companies. Lastly, the physical geographic environment. For Canadians know a little bit more about this than other people from warmer climates, but that affects things in many, many different ways. For example, this college is a perfect example. There may be times, hopefully in the next couple of days when we get snow, we don't have to come to school, parking lot's jam-packed, we lose the outer row, cold weather causes you have to spend more money on heating, which affects tuition costs because that has to be recovered. All kinds of things about the geographic weather environment. Driving. Insurance is higher in Canada because of the cost of driving in the winter because of accidents. You're driving at dark. Does anybody know what time sunsets today?
5:25.
5:25. Thanks, Mike. Our cameraman there. So if it says at 5:25, it means it's going to get pitch black around 5:45. So if you're driving home at 6, car insurance companies have to factor in how many accidents are going to happen as a result. And also time zones. The distances between, our coast to coast are very broad and expensive. China is kind of cool. They just decided to have one time zone. Doesn't matter if you're on the coast in Hong Kong or way over on the other side, one single time zone. But in Canada, we've got multiple time zones, so that affects visits. Even something like broadcasting the hockey game. What times it come on? 7 o'clock in Ontario, 8 o'clock in Manitoba. Lastly, the competitive environment. And the reason why the competitive environment is maybe the most important ones of these 6 environments is because if you have competition, you have to be very, very sensitive to all these other things. If you don't have competition, you don't have to worry about product and price, promotion, and social, cultural environment, and having things in different languages because there's not that same pressure. So, you have to worry about people knocking off your product if you've got a lot of competition. You have to pay your employees good wages. You have to make sure that you utilize all these resources to make sure you're competitive because you've got competition. If you don't have competition, you can pretty much do whatever you want.